Okay, we're going to kick this off with this quarter's Patriot Lunch. I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Will Marm. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm a U.S. Army veteran and a proud graduate of the Bancroft Capital Veteran Training Program. Welcome to this quarter's Patriot Lunch. We are featuring U.S. Air Force Colonel Langdon Root. Welcome, Langdon.
Hey guys, how are we doing today? Thanks for having me.
With this Patriot Lunch, I just let everybody know we're intending to build relationships. We succeed when those relationships and networks are connected and strengthened. I'd love to connect you with Langdon after this event, and I'd be even more pleased if you could share a conversation with him, a virtual cup of coffee, so he could learn about your roles, responsibilities, industry. This will best prepare him as he transitions into his next successful season and career. Most of you know about Bancroft Capital's special mission. We are a certified service-disabled veteran-owned small business operating as an institutional broker-dealer and a small investment bank. Through our veteran training program, we accomplish our mission, which is to train and empower transitioning veterans to succeed in the financial services industry. Bancroft Capital takes the proceeds of the business to pay for this special mission. The core lines of the business are debt and equity capital markets, public finance, fixed income, secondary trading desk, cash management, and investment banking. So please remember Bancroft Capital if you ever need these services. So about Langdon coming on board, Langdon is from Indiana. He went to Indiana State University. He's got his master's degree from Norwich. He's got another master's degree in national security strategies from the National War College in DC. He's an Air Force colonel, served for 26 years, and he's an F-16 fighter pilot. Langdon, I'd love to hear more about you. Please give us an introduction of who you are.
Hey, thank you very much, Will. First, I want to say thank you to you personally. For those of you that don't know Will, he is a honest, caring individual who has been a valuable resource to me personally. I know he doesn't like to be highlighted, but I want to make sure that if you haven't met him before, he's a contact worth having, and he's doing this on a volunteer basis out of the goodness of his heart. So thank you, Will, to you personally. I appreciate you and the team at Bancroft Capital that's enabling this today. So yeah, great job synopsis on my life and career. I'm a farm boy from Indiana. My dad's on the line right now, but grew up on a farm. Realized at an early age that I wanted to fly airplanes, and I was blessed to be able to go to college for that at Indiana State University. And after finishing college, I joined the Air Force through Officer Training School, where I've had a chance to see the world. My passion was flying, and right about the time that I was done with F-16 school, 9/11 happened. So I had a real sense while I was graduating F-16 school that my entire career was going to be defined by the counterinsurgency and the war on terrorism. I got married the month after that to a lovely wife who we now have 4 kids together. And that was the beginning of a 26-year career that was really broken up with 10 years of flying F-16s with multiple deployments and multiple bombs dropped in multiple countries. I did about 10 years of leadership in Air Force Special Warfare communities, to include the TACP officer career field, which is basically air liaison, airstrike folks that work with the Army, so we can take out folks in close proximity to friendlies without hurting the friendlies. And then I did about 6 years in the Pentagon, which was an interesting experience, working for the chairman of the Joint Chief of Staff doing global force management, and then also working for the Chief of Staff of the Air Force on projects for fighters and bombers, to include the Aircrew Crisis Task Force, which gave me a lot of time and exposure on the Hill, working public policy and budgetary issues to try to solve not just an Air Force, but a national pilot shortage. Real good stuff. There's propelled me to the job that I'm leaving right now, which is the Deputy Wing Commander at a wing out here at South Georgia in Valdosta. Last day of service is going to be on 31 December, so I only have a couple of weeks left. The last several months, I've spent my time on an internship with a boutique investment bank that has allowed me to secure my Series 7 license, and I am licensed to sell life insurance as well. And I'm working on my Series 63 license, which should be done here in just a couple of weeks. It look like, and that's the background officially. I would put myself as a value-based man, passionate about bringing value to people and businesses and I got a lot of fulfillment purpose out of that in the military, and I'm looking forward to transitioning that into the next phase of life.
That's a great, great overview, great intro. Lot to unpack there that I'm excited for our audience um, to hear and to understand. Um, and kind of rules of the road for the audience. If you got any questions, or just jam them in the chat, you can raise your Zoom hand. This is for you. So I'd love for you to interact with Langdon with whatever you're interested in talking about. So Langdon, good overview there. Appreciate that. But I want to unpack it a little bit more. I'd like to know your origin story. Like, what are the couple three trends, those events that and qualities that determine who you are today? Can you give us more information, more on that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's some providence involved. I was able to join the Air Force, thankfully, as an officer following college, and I didn't really know what I wanted to do in the Air Force other than fly. And so, through some chance, I got a chance to compete to go to Shepherd Air Force Base to become a fighter pilot in the Euro-NATO Joint Jet Pilot Training Program. It's called INJEP, and you basically get together with all the NATO countries, and all of their fighter pilots learn how to become fighter pilots at the same place. Well, most of them learn how to become fighter pilots at the same place in Wichita Falls, Texas. So that was the beginning of my baptism into fighter pilot culture, which you've probably seen Top Gun. You've seen a few movies out there about what that fighter pilot culture is. There really is not a lot of beach volleyball involved. There's a lot of ego involved, however, but what I one of the seminal defining moments in my life was whenever I got to be embraced by the fraternity of the fighter pilot, because it is an intense environment where it doesn't matter if you're a little fish in a big pond back home. When you show up into that peer group that's been competitively selected through multiple layers, you end up surrounded by a bunch of people who are valedictorians, college athletes, highly experienced competitors, highly intelligent, that all have a strong desire to win, to optimize their potential and be the best they can be. So surrounding myself with a peer group that was pretty elite was probably one of the first steps in me becoming the person that I am today. The things that you learn as a fighter pilot, that they teach and inculcate in you as characteristics in that culture, is elite competition to be the best that you can possibly be, while also teaching you how to perform your function inside of a successful team. So how to get the best out of yourself and how to get the best out of each other through a ruthless attention to detail and debrief, where we look at 100% flight, 1% goes wrong, 99% goes perfect. We don't talk about the 99% at all. We'll spend an hour digging into the 1% so we can figure out how to be better, because the mission is to survive. The mission is to win, and nothing short of that. So you get daily opportunities, both in training and in combat, to analyze risk, to apply judgment based off of your experiences and your knowledge. And so the opportunity to be in a high risk, high reward environment, constantly surrounded by people that are always better than you, driving you to be the best version of yourself, blended with a systematic approach to problem solving that's taught at the weapons school and inculcated into our community, which is, hey, if you have a problem, we have to find what is the debrief focal point? What is the problem? Let's discover root causes for the problem. Let's dig ourselves into what the, not just causal factors, but what the root cause is, so that we can apply lessons learned so we can go back and fix that problem. It's a very systematic approach to understanding how to get better and then applying mechanisms that last to improve performance. So I'd say that over, the first 10 years of my career, the public speaking, the debriefing, the constant leading, really shaped me into the person who was able to transition to more executive roles and leadership roles the last 16 years of my career. So I'd
Mhm.
say my first big leap into the person I am was earning my way into the fighter pilot community, and then
Mhm.
being raised to that standard.
And for everyone, just getting there it's hard, right? I mean, you got multiple layers of selections, a lot of assessments, um, and a lot of opportunities to prove yourself. But then once you're there, in the special forces community, we say every day is selection, because every
Mhm.
day you have to continue to prove yourself and continue to earn that slot there and to earn that seat at the table. Just because you got it doesn't mean you're going to keep it. And so the longevity of staying in that type of environment and culture is is really a testament to your quality and character and skill sets. Another thing I'd
Well,
like to say in terms of the debriefs and just the kind of the ruthless, focus on the 1%, the that for a quality trade, that's humility,
yep.
because, and I've been in them a lot where you focus on that one thing. If you're a second late or a second early, and you're essentially pinned up, not physically but verbally, you're pinned up against the wall, and it's brutal. There is no thin skin allowed in these debriefs, because we have to be perfect, because we're doing the hardest of the hard. And to that, I applaud you for that humility and that approachability and the ability to just be part of that. That's really neat. So I
Well,
got you to flying a jet. And uh, so somehow or another, you landed into an F-16, which I think is pretty fast. Never been faster than my car. And like, tell me, what's it like? Like, how did you choose F-16? And then maybe give us an operational experience you've had, in combat with flying on a mission.
yeah, absolutely. So coming out of Shepherd, I was fortunate enough to get an F-16. It was a combination of, where you rack and stack in your class, what your desires are. And then for me, the F-16 was my preferred choice because it was a single seat fighter, and some of the other aircraft have a person in the back seat. And so you work together as a team. And much like I have a hard time driving when my wife is talking to me about what's going on with the day, I've learned that I operate much better in that intense environment when I don't have to listen at the same time that I'm trying to make decisions. So I thought it was really good choice for me to go F-16s, and it worked out really well. So your crew resource management is from two jets, two pilots in two different jets, or four pilots in four different jets instead of two guys in one single jet, and that just worked better for me. But um, after getting my F-16 wings, and first assignment was up in Salt Lake City, Utah. It's a pretty dynamic time right after 9/11 happened, so that we watched but didn't participate in the U.S. mission into Afghanistan. But soon after, when the U.S. did go into Iraq and Baghdad, my unit did deploy fairly quickly into that mission. So we flew out of Al Udeid Air Base in Qatar, pretty close to Doha, on my first deployment. And one of the biggest memories I have is stake in the ground, both on the pleasant and the unpleasant side of my time flying F-16s, revolves around a single sortie. So it was pretty common at that point in the war for you to have quiet nights. It was after Baghdad fell. It was only a couple months after that, the statue of Saddam Hussein came down, and the insurgency was still getting organized. So there wasn't a lot going on during that first deployment. And so a lot of nights it'd be just me and a flight mate. We'd fly out. Um, we would circle in the sky in a one place right in the middle of the country at 30,000 feet at a pretty low throttle setting, and just wait for somebody to call us. It was close air support, but without a defined mission. So we were just on call, airborne, emergency response, close air support whenever somebody needed us. And so on this particular night, I was enjoying one of the best things about flying an F-16, which is on a clear night at 30,000 feet, you can put your night vision goggles on and you can look up and you can actually see the satellites start to move across the sky, which is a pretty neat thing. And it's the moonlight reflecting off of the the satellites that you can actually see. And so it was peaceful in this particular sortie, 30,000 feet. I'm in 1.5 miles trail, so right behind, just follow the leader, my flight lead. And as I looked down, his name was Monty. His call sign was Monty, and my flying call sign was Roto, Roto. And so I'm looking up at Monty, and all of a sudden I see sparks coming out of the back of his jet, and that's not good in a single seat fighter. You only have one engine in that single engine fighter, so we knew that was bad. So I called him immediately, said, "Hey, Monty, you got sparks coming out of the back of your jet." And he tried to talk back, but the vibrations were so intense that I could barely hear what he was saying. But what I did hear is that he had an oil bearing seized, and his engine was basically stuck at idle, but not the engine wasn't seized, but couldn't get any higher than idle. So in the F-16, there's a thrust to weight ratio so that you can glide about 5 miles for every 7,000 feet of elevation that you had. And we were at 36,000 feet, and we were about 30 miles away from Baghdad International Airport, which had craters through the runway still. It was unusable, but they had a taxiway that was half as wide as a runway that had taxi lights on it, and that was our emergency landing field, and we knew it. So based on where we were, we knew that Monty was going to have to immediately drop his tanks, drop his bombs, jettison them to the ground, and do his best to fly his aircraft, even though it was shaking so violently that he couldn't see the instrument gauges. So his full-time job was just going to be to max perform the gliding capability of the F-16, which is called a lawn dart, by the way, to give you an idea of how well it glides, so that he could fly to the airport, past the airport, turn around 180 degrees, and then land the opposite direction without ejecting, which would have been a bad scenario at this time in the war because there were insurgents all over the cities. And so he probably could have got picked up, and it would have definitely affected national thoughts and the media attention associated with the war just 2 months after the statue came down. Saddam was still somewhere in the country, so that would have been bad to have an American fighter pilot on the ground. So in this story, he's focusing primarily and only on being able to fly the jet. So what I have to do is, with my jet weighing more than his, because now he doesn't have fuel tanks and bombs, I have to stay behind him so I can see him because it's at night. And if I fly in front of him, I lose sight of him. And it's going to be really difficult for me to provide any support. So I immediately start to go into S turns, flying over the top of them at 500 to 1,000 feet, going 180 degrees either way so that I can keep sight of him. And while flying S turns, I have to get my checklist open to the emergency procedure on my lap and start reading the checklist at night under MVGs while flying S turns over the top of them, so that he knows what he's supposed to be doing to respond to the emergency, because he can't read the checklist in his jet. There's too many vibrations. While doing that, I have to work in to talk to air traffic control, approach control to the airport, and then the emergency response vehicles that were on the ground, which were not your traditional emergency response vehicles. It was actually some special forces folks, folks probably like you, Will, that were on the ground during that time to make sure that they knew he was coming, and that we had the right vehicles on the ground to respond to. Best case scenario, he rolls out safely and they need to pin the gear and pin the chaff and flares to keep them safe. Worst case scenario, respond to a crash into a major populated part of the city of Baghdad. So pretty exciting, adrenaline-filled time where you make mistakes, you do your best to recover, and you keep your head working 2 or 3 steps ahead so that you never fall behind while keeping sight, flying the jet while thinking and solving problems. He did a fabulous job. He ends up flying the perfect profile to just barely make the end of the taxiway. He landed, rolled out, and then I got to climb to 20,000 feet, hit the tanker, and fly home by myself all the way down the Gulf and to Qatar for the first time by myself. That was as big of an adventure as anything for a young lieutenant. But he ended up winning, my flight lead, Monty Matasik. He ended up winning the Air Force's annual safety for the biggest mission associated with safety in that year. So me and him got to fly to Washington, D.C. and meet the Chief of Staff of the Air Force the following year. And it was a good mission. Everything that was supposed to go right went right, thankfully.
That's pretty awesome. A really neat story about where your, it's all of a sudden. I mean, it's like any time in combat. It's a lot of boredom, pretty routine, normal, you're burning holes in the sky, and then it's not very quickly. And
Yep.
then you have to make life and death decisions rapidly. And so I applaud you for your integral response and support of your teammate. That's great and really neat. Those type of decisions and are created from hours and years, months and years of training and preparation. Um, and so you clearly perform, both of you performed under pressure. Very interesting. And Langdon and I connected this dot recently. When all that was happening with him, I was in Baghdad, right next to Baghdad airport, the exact same time. Unfortunately, I don't remember any any solo F-16s, gliding in. But I was very close. So it's pretty neat how connections are made that way.
Yeah, that's really cool. Thank you for your service for sure.
Yeah. My pleasure. And so you did fly in Iraq, and that has its own style. But you also flew in Afghanistan, which is completely different, wild environment in its own right. Can you talk to us about the differences and maybe some situations that you encountered in Afghanistan?
Yeah, absolutely. Iraq definitely was different. Depending on what time you were in Iraq, could be really boring. Or there was another time in Iraq where I had a chance to actually drop bombs on a terrorist training camp, which was pretty interesting. If we get into that story later, I'd be happy to tell that one. But in Afghanistan, it's a different type of flying in Afghanistan, whereas Iraq is all desert, except for when you get far north, close to Turkey, and then there's some mountainous region. But it's predominantly all desert with the Tigris and Euphrates bringing a little bit of splash of green in certain parts of the country. Afghanistan's a different, it's a place where empires go to die if you enjoy history. The far western part of Afghanistan and most of the southern part is desert. The northern part of Afghanistan is rolling fields and lots of grass, and it gets rolling hills. It's actually kind of beautiful. It reminds you of the American Midwest. And then if you get yourself out to the east and the northeast, especially with the Korengal Valley, there are mountain peaks that look like a skier's dream, 13, 16, even 19,000-foot mountains out there and rolling rivers. It's really beautiful, but it creates an environment where tactically you have to be ready for multiple different types of attacks and approaches. One of the most significant and memorable sorties of my career had to do with me leading a two-ship and my two-ship being two F-16s. We were supposed to go out that day. My wingman was a weapons officer, so think Top Gun, only the Air Force's version. And so the two of us had received a air support request to go up to the city of Kunduz, which is in the northern part, so kind of the grassy rolling hills area, fairly close to the border, where some of the stands, the Kazakhstan, homed a lot of Chechenian fighters that collaborated pretty well with a lot of Al-Qaeda and the terrorist groups up there. And so what we'd heard is that there was about 100 insurgent fighters that were planning on attacking a striker battalion of U.S. Army folks that were in the town of Kunduz. And they had been advertising it for a couple of days. They're basically picking a fight. And so the Army does what the Army does well. They just pull the convoy in the middle of the town and they tempted the fighters to come fight them. And so we had a rough idea at the time for that. And so we were stepping to our jets and starting our aircraft there at Bagram Air Force Base in Afghanistan with the idea to take off soon and go fly over Kunduz and support this mission. Well, just as we were getting ready to taxi to the end of the runway, I get a caution light in my jet, and I got a SEC, which is SEC, which stands for secondary mode. The F-16 is a electric jet, and so there's a primary mode that it flies in most of the time, but when there's some kind of a fault, it can be a software fault, it can be a mechanical problem, is sensed, that SEC light goes off, and it's a warning to you that something's not quite right with your engine. So if you push that caution light and the SEC light goes out, then that means there's about a 99% chance that it's a benign computer fault that just needs to be cleared out, and it's not an actual problem with the engine. But there is a a 1% chance that it could be something severe wrong with your engine. Any other day, the textbook answer is to give that jet back to maintenance, step to a spare, and then launch with the jet that does not have the engine light. Well, on this particular day, that would have cost us 20 minutes, and we got an update just prior to the light coming on saying that women and children had started to a mass exodus out of the city of Kunduz, and they were anticipating that fight starting anytime. And so we knew that 20 minutes might be the difference between life and death with a bunch of US soldiers that were on the ground. And so I talked to them and I decided to take the jet. It was my call. So I decided to take the jet and the slight increased risk that there might be a problem with the engine, knowing that I was probably going to be in trouble when I got back from my leadership. So we took off, never had a problem with the engine. We checked in on station over the city of Kunduz. We could see the Stryker battalion on the ground, 400 guys and a whole bunch of vehicles in the middle of town. And about 2 or 3 minutes after we checked in, people started pouring in out of the woods, out of the ground, out of buildings in the nearby areas to attack those soldiers. It was closer to 300 people that instead of the 100 that we heard about. And a pretty good gunfight starts that lasts about 30 minutes. During that time, we do a lot of strafing, a lot of bombing. We hit a lot of targets, and not a single U.S. soldier was injured seriously or killed during that time. So we flew home at the end of that mission, feeling pretty good about the work that we did that day. And when I got on the ground, my maintenance guy checked in. He goes, "Hey, sir, you know you have an indication here, a warning that says your engine light was on. Did you see that?" I was like, "Yeah, sure did." And he goes, "You didn't step to a spare?" I said, "Nope, I didn't." He goes, "Okay." And then I went back into the building and talked to my top three, which manages as another officer, another pilot that manages. He asked the same thing. "Hey, did you take that jet with the engine faulty?" I said, "Yep, sure did." And he goes, "Okay." And I went back to my desk to get to work, and I got a phone call from the squadron commander, who was my boss. And he goes, "Hey, Langdon, did you take that jet?" I said, "Yeah, I sure did." He goes, "Why?" And I explained to him the scenario and the fact that it was a risk I was willing to accept in that moment because it was worth it. And he said, "Okay, I don't disagree with you, but you know, I have to ground you. I have to do something because it is you're not supposed to do that. And I got to set an example for the rest of the kids." I said, "Yeah, absolutely. I understand that's the right thing to do for the organization." And so he grounded me for a week and he goes, "Yeah, we'll get you back up in the air as soon as we can." So it was one of those moments in life where you really kind of sit there and you have the responsibility. It's your judgment call to make. You think through the pros and the cons of what might happen and what you can live with, and then you make the decision. And so still to this day, that's one of the best decisions I ever made. And it's the easiest punishment I've ever received.
Yeah, it sounds like maybe like a ceremonial punishment for making the right decision.
Yeah, that's how I always took it.
Yeah, right. I mean, you had to make a decision, go or no go. Um, and those decisions, like a lot of these decisions in these high risk environments and professions, they're going to have a lot of consequences. It sounds like you made the right decision, and I applaud you for that. Yeah, yeah, it was very, clearly very courageous because it could have not been a small deal. It could have been a big deal. And it could have made things, very, 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 not good for you or not good for, the guys on the ground. So well done on that, and clearly helped the Army. Thanks for bailing them out as always. On the ground with some direct fire. Um, but like you were saying, leaders get paid for their judgment, and so you exercised your judgment. The cost could have been really high, but they would have been higher if you didn't go. And
Yeah.
so, well done on that.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. You mentioned earlier the importance of humility. You know, the credo that we really try to live by is humble, credible, and approachable, which is really important if you want to become the best at the technical aspect, the tactical aspect of it. You have to be humble, credible, and approachable so that we can work together to learn. Because in those moments when you have to make decisions comfortably in uncertainty, which we have to do a lot, both in the military and in industry, to be comfortable making decisions when you don't have all the facts. That requires a lot of research, a lot of dedication, a lot of training to make sure that you're weighed that decision as much in your favor as possible. And that was definitely one of those times where I could circle the risk. I knew what it was, and we mitigated it, and it
Mhm.
worked out.
Yeah, yeah, awesome, great story. Thanks, man. Um, so we're gonna now move into some of the interactions that and questions that our audience members have sent us. Um, um, from Chris, you spent a lot of time in the air. You burned some holes in the sky. You've gone really fast. You've seen a lot of things from that bird's eye view. Apparently, right now, New York, New Jersey is being, there are all these, UAPs and drones coming across the shore, and it's hitting a lot of congressional hearings. Have you had any personal experiences or secondhand stories of UAPs?
This is a great question, and it's one I'm starting to get quite a bit from friends and family. So yes, I've had some experiences with UAVs. I'll talk about that first for a second, and then maybe pontificate on what might be going on. When you're flying F-16s, those darn predators, those big UAVs in Iraq and Afghanistan just always seem to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. So I've flown past a few of them when I wasn't expecting to see them. And so I got a feeling for how difficult it is for pilots that are flying those drones from the ground to properly deconflict from a manned aircraft, and then how difficult they are to see because they're moving so slow and they're so small that they're really hard to see from the air as well. So as technology has gotten better, our radar systems, our early warning and indicator systems have got better. You're able to see those smaller drones much better. And that's kind of highlighted by what was it, a few months ago in a major attack on Israel from some of the drones from the counter Israel, probably a lot of Iranian influence that happened a few months ago. And the US F-15Es shot down dozens and dozens of those drones. So the technology has gotten better and better on that. However, there's a very real issue for the US at home when it comes to counter small UAS, unmanned aerial systems is what it's called. Because anybody can go out and buy a $100 drone and then fly it around, and that creates a lot of problems. You don't want to spend hundreds of millions of dollars to defeat a $30 or $100 drone. It's just unsustainable. So it is a real problem that the Pentagon's working at pretty hard that counter small UAS. But at the same time, there's a lot of both commercial. I got buddies that are working on Amazon right now on the small drone, how to monetize it, how to get regulations in the country. And that's important because there's not a lot of regulations that define what drones can or can't do. So it's kind of the wild, wild west while the FAA and the government try to put regulations that allow a little more systemic monitoring of these things. What do I think is going on? It's the UFO discussion and the drone discussion. I think that there are entities out there that may be commercial, they may be private, they may be international, it may be nefarious, or may not be nefarious, who have the ability to put drones up and fly them around to look at things because there's not a lot of rules and regulations that stop it right now. And so keeping an eye on who they are and what they're doing and what they're trying to do is the full-time job problem that the government's trying to solve right now. So I've never seen a UFO. Alien-based UFO. I've seen lots of flying objects that I didn't know what they were. So I guess that's technically a UFO as well. But as soon as they land and somebody tracks it down, then all of a sudden it becomes just an object, not unidentified or flying. So I'm keeping an eye on the things that are happening as these drones are approaching ships, and it has me concerned as well. But I think there's a pretty broad spectrum of what it could be. I think what we really need to do as a nation is settle on some rules and regulations that allow us to
Mhm.
to put some guardrails on the wild wild west of drone aviation.
Yeah. Yeah, you remember a couple of years ago, all those balloons that from China came all the way across the country,
Yeah,
and that happens all the time. So that's fascinating. Certainly not the last time we're going to hear about that. And hopefully we can get our act together and set up the structure, rules, regulations, policies, and also the defenses to prevent it when somebody decides to ignore that.
yeah,
So next question we have is more kind of forward focused,
yeah.
and it's a little introspection and then forecasting. So introspection, what do you think, Langdon, your strengths are, your characteristics that would lend you to the next season of your life? And then in that, with your, whatever, let's say 4 6 months of exposure to the financial world, where do you think you're called to go to, or where can you fit in? What do you like about certain aspects of financial services?
No, that's a great question. Thank you for the opportunity to answer it. The transition process from the military to the civilian sector is a wonderful opportunity to look inwardly and reflect, to see what your motivations are, the things that you've succeeded at, and the things that you want to avoid. Um, and I've done that over the last 6 to 12 months, and things that I'm really passionate about is people. I love leadership. I love mentorship. I love guiding teams to optimize their output while optimizing and growing the individuals for bigger and better things. Um, I, I love taking care of people and missions. So purpose is really important to me. I'm not interested in going someplace and making widgets for the sake of making widgets. I'm looking for purpose that allows me to push things that I care about and are meaningful to me, whether it be national defense, my faith, my interests, but really supporting people is a big deal to me. So through the course of my internship, it's given me a chance to pursue things that I'm interested in, right? I am interested in finances. I'm interested in the financial industry. I find myself constantly trying to find ways to make deals. As a small business owner of an LLC for a few rental properties that I've had a chance to kind of run that small business for about a decade and a half right now. I just love business. So gaining my license to sell insurance and my Series 7 license, about to get my Series 63 license. I'm wide open to where that takes me, whether it be through financial advisor or wealth management. In my internship right now, I'm getting some exposure to, and I'm actually actively working as a business consultant on an M&A deal. And I'm finding that really fascinating to help SDV, OSB customers figure out how to solve their problems. And so I'm going where this train is taking me, I love being open to those opportunities as they come up. But my first day as a civilian is 1 January, and so it's getting exciting to see what doors open.
Yeah, I love the phrase I'm going where this train is taking me.
Mhm.
Because it's going to be a train ride. It's going to go somewhere, and I do have I'm confident that you're going to land just where you need to be and make an impact with a purpose, kind of purpose mission, purpose driven life that you're leading. So applaud
Amen.
you on that. We have a couple more minutes. Um, there is a last question here which I can ask. Um, and I'll just read it here for you. You talk about making decisions without all the information, as you know, our experience suggests. You alluded to the development and the implementation of a process which you learned in your military experience that better equipped you to make decisions in that environment. Can you talk a bit now about how you see that skill set, the process you learned on decision making,
Mhm.
serving you in the M&A or any other civilian discipline?
No, that's great. I think the first thing that I want to say is um, making decisions without all the available information, I think is a skill that you have to wield carefully, because I don't want anybody to hear that it's important to rush through decisions, right? There comes a point where decisiveness is necessary. In the back of my mind, I try to remember George Patton, who used to say that a 51% plan executed violently now is better than a 100% plan executed too late. So timing matters. Being able to take advantage of an opportunity like a running back who's trying to wait until the gap opens, it's okay to delay, but when that gap opens, you got to hit it to take advantage of it. And so um, I would say that the ability to be looking for opportunities, to gather information, to be building relationships so that your technical expertise and your experience creates an environment where you see the right time to make that decision. Even if you don't have all of the information that you need, you have the awareness and the experience to know that if you wait longer to make that decision, the potential return on investment or the potential payback might be reduced. And so I think there's a sliding scale of judgment that needs to be executed, and that comes from gaining experience and exposure. And so I think my experience in the military has taught me that that's an inevitable part of my judgment that grows as knowledge and experience in that career field grows. I'm not afraid to make decisions. I know how to make decisions, and I know that reaching out to the right people, building the right relationships, so that the experts are that have the information can inform you, so that you can make those decisions from a base of knowledge, even when the experience is lacking.
Hmm.
Does that make
Yeah,
sense?
yeah, I think it totally does. Does anybody else have any other questions as we start to wrap this up? If you do, you can raise your hand, you can type it, and you can just unmute yourself. Okay. Well, we've had I think, a wonderful discussion,
I have,
conversation.
I
Oh,
have a
hey,
question.
Della, go for it.
um, Langdon, what do you think is the most valuable contribution you made to the military?
Oh, Della, thank you for asking that question, because it gets to my heart. I don't think it's anything I ever blew up or trained or destroyed. The most valuable contribution that I made, you're gonna get me emotional. I had a chance to take care of, love, and support on the best and worst days of their lives, America's sons and daughters. The most rewarding experience I ever had was being a commander of a squadron where 250 airmen and their families relied on me every day to solve problems for them. So getting young men into the Air Force Academy that had no idea that they had the talent to go to college, helping people go to OTS, Officer Training School, helping people solve marriage problems that they're having, solve financial problems, giving discipline out of love as a way to correct behavior that was going to hurt their life. All of those things are by far the legacy that I want to be remembered for in the Air Force. Not so much flying F-16s or working in Air Force Special Warfare, but the individual lives that I helped to make better.
Langdon, thank you. Awesome response, Della. Wonderful question. Thank you for asking. Is there anybody else that had any further questions? You got it, you got it, Della. You nailed it. And Langdon, right? The love of the service member, and that's why we do this, because um, we want to help service members transition into a successful career after they've just dedicated their lives and were willing to sacrifice it. If that sec light was not really a small deal and it would have just blown the plane out of the sky, you're making the decisions to take care of the people. And so for that, we applaud you, Langdon. Thank you for your time today. Um, so we're going to close it. We're running out of time. To the friends in the audience, we hope this Patriot Lunch has provided you an opportunity to enjoy the small group dialogue with an accomplished veteran. Langdon has freely chosen to dedicate his life. He was willing to sacrifice it, and his family stuck by with him. And for that, America owes you an immense amount of gratitude and thank you. And so, on behalf of Bancroft Capital and corporate America, which Bancroft Capital inherently represents, thank you, Langdon, for your service and sacrifice.
Thank you, Will, and thank you to everybody that dialed in. I greatly appreciate this. I'm honored to spend my lunch with you today and tell a few stories. Thank you.
Yeah, you got it. So everyone, you're gonna get an email with his contact. So feel free, please. I would love it. That just makes my day when I get the feedback from you or the service member. Um, that you've linked up, that you had a nice conversation. That's really that's the big win here. So you'll get a link to listen to this. Share it, please. Share it with your network. Share it with your veteran employee resource groups, HR teams. You heard him. He's wide open. Come about 2 more weeks, 2 more weeks of festivities and Advent and Christmas. And stay tuned, please, everyone, for the next Patriot Lunch to be scheduled in mid-March. Like I said, forward that out to your company and your colleagues and your networks.
It will.
We want
if
to
I
share
can
the
chime-
good news.
If I could chime in as people are kind of getting ready to log off, these are important to our firm, important to the veteran community, that we're supporting veterans in their transition as much as we can. We still have an all volunteer military last time I checked, right? And we've got to ensure that we're providing opportunity for those veterans as they transition into their civilian lives that are commensurate with their skill set, and not giving them anything, but presenting them the opportunity that they are deserving and have earned through the development of their skill set over that period of time. I think you kind of listen to somebody like Langdon and his experiences, the processes that have become embedded in him, use the word, inculcate, right? So to become a part of your very DNA through the training process that he undertook, not just on day one of the first 10 years, but all 26 years of his career, that creates a capacity for someone to operate very effectively in the civilian marketplace as well. A guy that worked with us and came to our training program many years ago said, hey, when asked how did he operate in such a difficult and cutthroat environment of Wall Street, he said, look, as long as nobody's trying to kill me at the end of the day, I'm good, right? Because I've worked in more difficult environments than this, right? And that's the truth of Colonel Langdon or Colonel Root or any of the vets that come through this. It is the skill sets that he's developed and hewn in his military service that will make him incredibly successful in any civilian career. And I hope people take that back, as you mentioned, to their ERGs and employing managers, and take advantage of this opportunity to grasp a really incredible talent.
Thank you, Cal, for that. So with that, I'd like to thank you all, and I hope you all have a wonderful rest of December, Advent, Christmas season. Take some time and reflect, give thanks, and rest, and just thank you for everything you guys do.